Welcome to the Thrive College podcast. I'm Dina Davidson, host of the podcast and discipleship director of Thrive College. We have a couple students that are quite amazing.
Hello.
But
Hi.
first,
Yes.
the hello was the Mark Clark.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, that's my favorite way to introduce
Okay.
people.
It is a bit of a weird name. I don't know why my parents called me Mark Clark. It rhymes. It's ridiculous in every way.
They knew you were going to be a speaker maybe in some part of their soul, and so
yeah,
they're like,
maybe.
give him a catchy name. People can remember
it's like
that
a
one.
Cartoon character in my brain. But anyways, yes.
Perfect.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. A little bit about you, Mark. You are the newest addition to our pastoral team at Bayside Granite Bay, senior campus pastor, one of our brilliant communicators. You just laughed.
Brilliant.
No,
Very
it's
strong
okay.
word,
Kurt
guys.
said, hey, you have to say that about Mark.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, you, before you came to Bayside, you planted an incredible church in Vancouver that was just known for reaching people that are far from God. You have a wife who we love. She's been hanging out at the Unleashed conference, and
She's
3
fun.
gorgeous daughters.
Yes, well, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll
And
see her doing.
I almost forgot. You are the author of 2 excellent books.
Almost forgot.
Almost forgot. I
Yes,
did.
yes,
This
yes.
is a really important thing for people to know, though. You wrote The Problem of God and The
Yep.
Problem of Jesus.
Yes.
Here's how I would describe those books. Mark did not pay me to say this. This is not endorsed by Mark. But honestly, I feel like every generation has someone who not just gives the right answers, but understands the right way to ask the questions. They know how to frame the questions in a way that the secular mindset just says, yes, that is what I'm asking about God and the Christian faith. And for me, when I read The Problem of God, I was like, it's Mark.
Cool.
Mark's the
Well,
voice
thanks.
for the generation.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You got
I
it.
appreciate you saying that. Yeah.
So we have 2 amazing students, as I said.
up?
Malachi, why don't you go ahead and, sorry, Lizette. I know
no,
you
you're
said
good. I was
hi.
just saying
We'll go with Lizette first. Sorry, Malachi.
All good.
Oh my gosh, ladies
It's okay.
first. That's
Oh,
all right.
wow. Okay. You're right. I was going out of order.
You're right.
Lizette, go ahead and introduce
Hi,
yourself.
my name's Lisette. I am a Thrive College student here, and I get to intern with groups, do a little bit of everything. But one day, I hope to just make a huge impact for Jesus, whether that's in the ministry of a church or outside of those walls. But yeah, trying to figure it out. But love to be a mother one day, or
Oh,
something
love it.
like that.
And
Love
a fantastic prayer.
Oh.
An
Yes.
unbelievable prayer. Like
Oh,
just
yes.
slays the game.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Definitely.
We have a whole preaching sermon prep process, and I feel like Lizette, we call on you all the time to pray. We're just like, we just need Jesus in this meeting.
I
Lizette,
pulled
can
her
you
up
pray
on
for
stage
us?
to pray in
Oh.
front of the church last
Oh,
night. She didn't know
no
it was
way.
coming, but oh, yeah, she
What?
didn't know it was
I
coming.
blacked out. I honestly, I don't remember any of that.
She was backstage. I'm like, get up here. I'm gonna pray for the offering. And she's like, good.
She's like, I'm going to do
Yeah,
what?
yeah, Mark,
And then-
you can learn from me.
Yeah.
I'll teach
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
guys.
Slayed it.
I love it.
Definitely.
Okay, finally. You were so patient. Malachi, please introduce yourself.
My name is Malachi, and I'm in the production internship. And in the future, I hope to be. I just have a lot of dreams. So, one of them being impact the world somehow, some way.
Great. Love it.
Yeah,
So good.
gifted communicator, and he's actually runs All Things Podcast. So yeah, if the audio is terrible on this, it's Malachi is on the wrong side of the mic,
Yeah.
but we're stoked to have you because he's also a brilliant mind. He's got some great
Love
questions.
it. Love it.
Rapid fire questions for you, Mark.
Okay.
Where were you born? Where do you live now? And tell us one thing from your youth you want more people to know.
Toronto. Now I live in Sacramento. I lived in Vancouver for 18 years between those two. Something from my youth. Oh man, I'm drawing a blank. I don't know that people should know. Well, we're talking about the book, Skeptic book. It came out of a family of skeptics. So my dad was. I tell the story in the book pretty early. My dad was such a skeptic that they were going to name my brother Matthew, and he didn't want them to spell his name with 2 T's because then it would be the Bible the way of spelling it. So they spelled it with 1 T. So literally, my brother's name is Matthew with 1 T. And then 4 years later, they had me and named me Mark. So clearly, this guy had never read a Bible before. If I had another brother, it'd be like Luke. I think Luke's a good name. So anyway, that was interesting. That I come to Christ when I'm 17 and walk into a church when I'm 19. And anyway, so the book, The Problem of God, kind of comes out of a bunch of questions I had growing up as a skeptic and how to answer them. So,
And when did you launch Village Church?
2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how old were you?
I was 29 when we launched. At 27 when I got the idea, the call to do it.
That's
it
a
was
crazy
in a
short
kind of a
time.
Between
becoming a Christian and then launching this
right?
crazy
It shouldn't
awesome
have worked.
church.
It doesn't make any sense. Why would God bless that? Like, let's wait till he's 40 and has a couple kids and shows himself to be a proper elder of the Lord, whatever. And it's like,
that's not the way.
27-year-old missionary just yelling at people with a Bible in his hand. So,
I love that. Yeah, for anyone who's listening, hey, maybe don't wait until it seems like it's the safe.
Hey.
Of course, God's made me ready.
100%. Yeah, I believe that. Yeah,
Love
that's
it.
what I was just talking about in the conference. Yeah.
So good. Yes, you spoke at our Unleashed conference on Proverbs.
Yeah.
Love
Fire.
it, listening to God. So at the Thrive College podcast, we always love to pass the mic to our young leaders so they can ask their questions. So
Love it.
I did ladies first last time. I just got to check it with Lizette. Is it
Yeah.
okay
It's
if we
okay.
do
Malachi,
Malachi
you can
first
go
this
ahead.
time?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Malachi.
You're right.
So I'm curious, from Canada to America, is there a difference in like trust in God and like questions that come out of that? Because like, I don't know, is there just like a divide in questions and theological questions?
Yeah, it's a great question. The cultural differences are huge. I mean, we're a border away, but we're probably, they usually say that Canada's probably about a generation or two ahead of the U.S. in regard to secularization. So stuff that I find people wrestling with down here, it was like 20, 30 years ago in Canada. So I'm not talking about that anymore. So we're similar to Europe in the sense of like secularization, culturally, removal of church and state. Like I like the joke. There's a $5 bill in Canada, and on it there's a hockey rink and a kid playing hockey. In a very small print, it says, "I lived my childhood in 3 places: the schoolhouse, the hockey rink, and the church. But the most important of the 3 was the hockey rink."
It says that?
Yeah.
Wow.
So literally,
Oh
on
my
our
gosh,
current-
that's so
we're not
crazy.
in God we trust.
We're like in God we
hockey.
trust.
Yeah.
And
So-
hockey.
So you're talking
Wow,
to people
that's
who are like
crazy.
just culturally, like there's no like I grew up in a home. Take my home as a microcosm. Like there's no that stupid term Creaster where people come to church at Christmas and Easter.
Yeah.
Not even that. Like that is not built into the fabric of the culture of Canada anymore. It was like 80 years ago.
Yeah.
Especially in Quebec, if you start looking at French Canada, it's a vastly different thing. Very high Catholicism, Anglicanism. But yeah, it's gone. And so coming down here, there's like a cultural piece where Christmas Eve, we got the church grows by 4 or 5 times.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. So anyways, so definitely differences there, differences politically, differences, theologically. I think there's just some people kind of asking some different questions. But on the flip side, people are people. So when I'm writing the problem of God, it's it's answering those top 10. So whether you're in Toronto or whether you're in New York City, people are going to say evil and suffering. What's the deal? Hell, the exclusivity, hypocrisy. The church is hypocritical. I don't want to be. The sex question, the science question, all these. So it's like in that sense, whether you're in Europe or whatever, there's some human questions that I think rise to the surface. So
So good.
So a yes and no answer.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Do you think America could go down that path? Or it is
I
already?
definitely, I like to say when I'm speaking on the stage in the U.S., I like to say, I come to you from the future.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's where culture is probably going. And so, but, Rodney Stark, who's a sociologist years ago, he wrote, and this is where I'm kind of hopeful, he said, the rise of secularization in a culture doesn't necessarily mean the end of religion. It means the basically it stimulates, it doesn't kill religion, it stimulates innovation. Meaning we have to, it's almost like an economic metaphor. It's like when a certain business or whatever starts to collapse, people start to think about new things, and then 10 new businesses arise out of that because you had to solve a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not going to kill Christianity. It's just, it might drive it underground. It might innovate us to go, how do you reach people online or not in the way that we have been? And so the hope of it is it could just stimulate innovative ways to do Christianity instead of kill religion, which is, I think,
Interesting.
could be the thing.
That's
I
awesome.
think that's so hopeful. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a lot of times I read articles and it's like doom and gloom and like the secularization of society and all these churches are dying. And it's like, what generation am I living in that this is happening on my watch?
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful from what you just said that, if a church like Village can flourish and thrive and people can come to know the Lord in the future of where we're heading, well, then we can innovate just like you're saying. And I think that's a charge to you guys, especially as the younger generation, to not just look at the way that the Marks of the world and the Dinas of the world are leading the church, but to say, hey, this is how I think we should do church so that we can actually reach people that no one is reaching.
Right. That's
So
really
good. All right, Lizette.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, so I have a really deep theological question. So I don't know if you're ready for this. This is, what is your favorite color? That was not my question.
Blue.
Yeah.
Oh, it's blue. Okay.
That's a good color. That's a good color.
What is it?
No, that was actually not my question. I mean, I still want to know that, but that's good. So you said that you kind of came to the Lord when you were 17, and obviously you're a skeptic. You know, had many challenges within that. But was there a point in your life where it was kind of like your faith was tested and challenged, and you kind of came to a turning point, and you had to either choose God or choose the way of the world in a sense, and like what got you through that past that point?
Yeah, great question. And totally, like, my whole testimony is, or my whole story is that. You know, parents got divorced when I'm 7 or 8. I developed Tourette's syndrome and obsessive compulsive disorder when I'm like 9, which means I swear and do random tics and habits, which is not a way to be cool in high school. My dad dies when I'm 15 of lung cancer. Never calls us to tell us he's dying. So it's like, okay, what's the deal? Abandonment, you know. So I come to faith, you know. Out of that world, I have all non-Christian friends. So now the challenge is, and I've lived a non-Christian lifestyle. So now it's like, okay, how does God start to actually transform, you know, not what I love to say this, that the beautiful thing about the gospel is that it doesn't transform what you do, it transforms what you want to do.
Wow.
It gets inside and actually changes your affections for stuff versus just, okay, now I'm going to be a good Christian boy who, you know, doesn't do these things. So I was 2 years of just reading the Bible and telling people about Jesus before I ever walked into a church, and learned that half of the stuff I was doing was wrong. Like, I was baptized. Like, I remember this one night, I walk up to these bunch of dudes. So I had all these friends. These guys are hammered. I'm telling them about Jesus. This woman's out on her porch. I'm telling her about Jesus. This other group of guys, I'm telling them about Jesus. And they're like, hey, let's baptize. So I go down to the Lake Ontario. It's 2 a.m. I'm baptizing these guys. This is 2 years before I'm even baptized. So this is just bad ecclesiology and bad theology, you know. And so, you know, it's just that raw kind of thing. And then I came to the church and started realizing, oh, you know. And so, yeah, I think my faith was kind of born out of kind of a crucible of a whole bunch of stuff, thinking, worldview stuff. You know, I was sitting around with friends, you know, smoking weed and hanging out in the, you know, hot box in the garage one night. And 3 weeks later, I'm a Christian. I'm back in there defending Christianity. Yeah. You know, still a little high because they got the garage closed. But now I got to tell them about Jesus. And that was my whole. So I think you know, my whole mission in life, whether it's writing or preaching or leading a church or whatever, it's like born out of I'm still trying to reach them, that garage, my family, who think I, you know, lead a cult. And, you know, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And they say, what did you do this Sunday? Well, I drank the blood and ate the body of a dead man. I can see what you're saying, you know. And they show up for my baptism, and I got this big white sheet on, right? And there's a Baptist church. You know. And so, yeah, I think just a lot of my faith is kind of born out of that. How do I answer those big questions? Why did my dad die? And from what all I know, didn't know Jesus. And why did, you know, it's all of those questions that, you know, searching the scriptures and thinking on the cross and resurrection of Jesus have come to, you know, somewhat answer to some rational view as far as you can, I guess.
Yeah. So you say it was more like a journey of like your lifelong journey versus like a moment that you remember, you know, sitting in your room. You
mean my conversion? Because I did have a moment of conversion, but you're just talking about in general, faith and how it got developed. I think it's just constant. It's always shifting and changing. You're always like, oh yeah, how does that change it? How does that fit in? And what does that event do? And we're just constantly kind of, you know, the faith is kind of a live thing, and it's like it has certain content that's like foundational, and then it just constantly grows. In its content, and so
that's good.
Yeah.
So good.
Thanks.
What are you currently thinking and writing about?
Okay, great question. I'm writing a book right now on, so the easiest elevator pitch would be if the problem of God and the problem of Jesus are about God, this one, the third one's about us.
Okay.
And so it's like, truth, goodness, beauty as the three branches of proving God, kind of the aesthetical argument. That's the book I'm writing right now. So it's like the soul, it's beauty, weight, the weight of glory type stuff. C.S. Lewis, why do we have this longing for a world we've never actually been a part of? Why news from a country we've never been to, a song we've never, all of that. I'm writing a whole book on that.
Wow.
What is that? What is that? That's because you were actually built for another world, that kind of thing. So, so I'm doing a lot of thinking, kind of anthropology almost, but not like, try not to be boring. Like, we were Homo sapiens and Homo erectus, 10,000 BC. Like, there's some of that in there, but it's more like, let's get to the soul stuff. Let's get to what, So the first couple of chapters, like a lot of thinking around humankind, and obviously this discussion now coming out about like, what does it mean to be human, personhood theory.
Right.
Does your body have any hint toward your identity or not? Is it just what you feel? Is it just your affections that get to define your identity, or does the physical world ever get to hint toward, all of that?
Wow.
Is the first couple of some stuff in there, because you got to deal with creation when you're dealing with us. What is Genesis 1, 2, 3 about? What is the point of it? And then getting into, the problem of the soul, the problem of joy, the problem of eternity, the problem of the mind, the problem, a bunch of problems. So it's the third problem, and it's going to be I'm going to be done. It's my trilogy.
Okay,
it's my
there you
problem
go.
Trilogy, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to be done with the problem.
I don't know.
And
Some
hopefully can move
people
on to
start
other things.
trilogy, go on to 10. It can just be gateway. No, okay.
So anyway, that's what I'm reading and writing about.
The solution problems are going to come out. It's 3 books on the problem, 3 books on solutions.
So it
Love
might be
it.
called like the problem of life or something. So it's going to try to be like an all-encompassing, like, what is all this? What is this human experience?
Yeah.
And what is it meant for?
Just the deepest question everyone's asking. No big deal.
That's really
Something I think about on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
NBD. Yeah, I think so.
big
I'm not the one to ask.
The elevator is 40 stories.
I love it. Okay. So our last question that we always ask before we get there, if people want to access your sermons, listen to you preach, how can they find you?
The Bayside
YouTube.
sermon podcast and YouTube. I preach twice a month, I think, 50% of the time at the Granite Bay campus, and then around, like I'm preaching the Blue Oak campus this weekend, so around a little bit, but that would be the main way
Love
to
it.
do that.
Also the Village Archives.
The Village Church Archives, Village Church BC, Village Church Mark Clark, and that's got 12 years of stuff. Well, I don't know if they're deleting them as the time goes by, and they need to like free up the the space on the servers or whatever. So I don't know if you can go back to 2012, but there's a bunch of years of stuff on there. Yeah.
Excellent. So good. Okay. Last question we always ask on the podcast. What's the one thing you want to say to a young Christian leader?
Man, so many things. I mean, character, key. Got it. My friend Carrie Newhoff always says character, competency will get you in the room. Character will keep you there. I think that's really important in an age like ours where it's like, go after influence and whatever. And it's like, but if you go after influence in some ways, if you're not built for the lights or the stage or the attention, it'll shrivel your soul, and then you'll end up making mistakes that will, disqualify you, unfortunately. So if the character is intact and you're living for something more than that, then that's going to be key. And then God, like, I just love being a gospel Bible guy and just going like, just trust the God, like trust the, like, we'll talk about the old school, like sin's a thing, Jesus atonement, that old school kind of gospel stuff. I think you just got to hold on to that and trust it. Right? Romans 1, right? It's the power of God unto salvation. The only thing we've got is the gospel. That's the thing that's going to actually change people versus like, hey, look at me and my dee. I'm going to entertain everyone. Look at me juggle. Look at the helicopter comes into the roof and we're wrestling a tiger and everybody come and see. And it's like that stuff doesn't last, right? And so how do you actually just just look at people and go, look, this is the deal. It's the life, death, resurrection of Jesus. Every sermon, every leadership thing, everything you're doing, it's like just gospel centered from beginning to end. I think if you hold on to that, you'll be okay.
So good.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked a lot in this episode about people that really Mark's own journey of not knowing Christ and then coming to know Christ. If you know someone who has got the opposite story, they know Christ, they've walked in the faith, and yet somehow they've started to deconstruct their faith, we do want to end this episode by telling you about an amazing resource that we developed for you at Thrive College. We sat down with Dr. John Marriott. He has a literal doctorate in why people deconvert from Christianity to atheism. We sat down and we just asked the question, how can we help our friends who are deconstructing their faith? So if you know someone who is not on their journey towards faith, but is on a journey away from the faith, then please go to mythrivcollege.com/deconstruct, access that resource and help your friends. With that, I want to thank you so much, Mark, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Guys.
It's great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Thrive College podcast. We hope that today's episode has empowered you to navigate the challenges and the opportunities of your future and your faith. If you really enjoyed our conversation today and appreciated what we had to offer, we would love for you to write a 5-star written review and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.